Welcome to WagerTalk Super Bowl weekend. It's the day before the big game if you're listening to WagerTalk on Friday. Welcome to the show. Scott Spreitzer here with WagerTalk.com's Dave Cokin and Marco D'Angelo. Mark Seidel at the controls. Super Bowl 52 is upon us. We're going to talk a lot of props, some side talk, some total talk, all points in between, and a little weekend college basketball. But first, as always, we kick off the show going behind the counter with Matt Holt of CGT Sportsbooks here in Las Vegas. Earlier today on the Las Vegas Sports Line, Matt gave Dave and I the latest betting handle, the information on Super Bowl 52.
Okay, Matt, you posed this question on Twitter, and I want to know if you have an answer for your own question. Now that Gronk has been cleared to play, where's the Patriots' money? You asked that, and I don't know what the answer is. Do you?
I don't know either, and the only assumption I could think we can make at this point is that the big bettors are waiting on the Patriots to try to get that 4 or 4.5. I mean, I guess you can get 4s now if you shop around, but trying to get that 3.5 maybe, because there's no value, or you're not going to lose any value in waiting to bet the Patriots. At this point, it seems like it's not going back to 5. It's certainly not heading back to 6. So my only assumption is that they're waiting because, hey, what if it goes to 3.5? That really is significant. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, all I heard for days is, well, we all know we're going to see this boost as soon as Gronk's officially cleared concussion protocol, but that happened, and I can assure you today that our Eagles' liability, while it hasn't continued to soar up, it's been inching up all day. We're just not seeing that Patriots money.
So nobody coming in right now based on this supposedly, big flu bug going around the Eagles clubhouse that we've heard this morning?
I know that, and it's like a double dip, right? Gronk officially gets cleared today. Eagles players have the flu running rampant through the Eagles locker room, as some people are reporting, which is probably overstating. And yet nothing to this point. I think the 4 biggest bets today we took, all on the Eagles.
I mean, it's funny because Brady stubs his toe, and it's all over the national media for the next 5 days. Philly's got guys, basically puking in the stall, and they don't have enough stalls to take advantage, and there's hardly any word. You just don't hear about it.
Yeah, that's right. As we spoke, we did just take another $80K bet on Patriots money line, which seems to be the preferred method of a lot of Patriots bettors to this point. But
that's the value
again,
bet,
yet to take a 6-figure bet, yet to take even a $50K bet on the Pats spread.
Matt, the Patriots money. I mean, look, and this isn't a prediction of the game. Just from a value standpoint, among the main wagers, Patriots money line is the best value on the board.
Yeah, and plenty of Patriots money line action. Obviously, we took one $700,000 bet on Philly money line, so we have plenty of Philly money line as well. But yeah, no shortage of Patriots money line bets, just not many Patriots spread bets rolling in.
All right, now something else that has me a little baffled, to be honest with you, and again, it's not a prediction of the game, but I was sure, and this tells you how wrong I can be sometimes. I was sure that by now we'd be seeing 49.5 on the total, and that hasn't happened yet.
No, but they are betting the over, but just not at the clip you would think either. So, I mean, I assume that everyone's probably in a similar situation to us. We're 48.5, and there's a lot of 48, so maybe everyone isn't in the same situation. We're pretty steep to the over here, but it's not so devastating that we want to go to 49 at this point. We're already higher than market at 48.5. And it's both sharps and public here. 2.5 times as much dollars wagered on the over the counter, and almost 3 times as much dollars wagered on the over on account. So it's both the public and the sharps on this one, both leaning on the over. But yeah, I don't think we're going to hit any 49.5s or anything. But look, if we continue at this pace, we certainly could hit 49.
I got to ask you, Matt, I was asked yesterday doing Patrick Maher's show on Mad Dog Radio. He asked me if the overall handle in the state of Nevada is going to surpass last year's record of 138.4 million. You said to us yesterday that the ticket count is brisk, but the money hasn't been as heavily bet as you thought it would be at this point. Do you still think it's going to get over that 138.4?
I don't know. If you put, gun to my head, I have to bet one of those sides. I think I would bet under. And I know that, some of these big bets that people have heard going around town so far on the Philadelphia money line, there's been several 7 figures and at least high 6-figure bets, including the 700 we took on the Eagles money line, probably sparked a lot of people to maybe be a little over-optimistic right out of the gate. because I'm sure people had a ton of handle early all of a sudden with that bet and the buyback you get when you take a bet that big. But we're just not seeing the spread bets of that substantiated size that we normally see. Sure, we're all hearing about tons of big money line bets, but you need those spread bets too. If we do get over, I think this year will be because of the props. Look, at this point, 38% of dollars wagered, and this was this morning, could even be higher now. I've seen it as high as 42% at one point yesterday. 38% of the dollars we've taken on the Super Bowl so far on props.
If the game is close, if a football game is close, does that increase or decrease live betting in game?
It certainly helps it. There's a certain group of people, while there's plenty of people that will take a shot on the dog if it turns into a blowout, you'll see a lot more engaged people in game if the game is close.
Well, I'll make a prediction. I think it will go over last year's dollar total because I think it's going to be a close football game, and I think the live betting is going to be monstrous in this game. I think it'll be by far the largest live betting handle ever. Obviously, because more people have the apps now than they used to, but I think a close game between these two teams is going to encourage people to fire away.
And I think it's also going to crush the old record for prop handle. I mean, just imagine if we did 40%, let's say we're going to do $140 million, and 40% of it's props. You're talking about a big prop number. More than $50 million, $50 to $60 million on props, that's a big number, and that seems really attainable this year, as everyone I've talked to, including our places where I'm looking at the numbers, are doing big prop handles.
Any prop that's jumped out as far as the lead dog when it comes to, the most popular bet prop right now?
No, I think a lot of them are the usual suspects. Will there be a safety, score in the last 2 minutes of the first half, all of the, score in the first 3.5 minutes, first 5 minutes, first 6 minutes of the first quarter. The nose on those have been very popular. Will Garrett Blount score touchdowns been very popular. All the alternative spreads in favor of Philadelphia have been popular. False start, his first penalty of the game, has started to become popular. And the player props, the player props have continued to rise and grow at exponential rates every year, but this year it's just unbelievable the amount of handle we have on Gronk, Amendola, Jay Ajayi, Brandon Cooks, Dion Lewis, all just huge two-way handle on all those player props.
All right. It's going to be fun, no question about that. And we'll keep our eyes on what happens with these numbers between now and Super Bowl Sunday. This is my opinion, I don't think there's anybody in Las Vegas sharper on the UFC and mixed martial arts than Matt Holt. He just knows his stuff, not only as an odds maker, but as a bettor as well. So, Matt, you look at this card this weekend, and look, let's call it straight. It's not exactly an electrifying card. But from a betting standpoint, sometimes cards like this can offer some great value.
Yeah, I think this is actually a fairly decent betting card. We did the podcast yesterday at UFC Hall of Famer Stephan Bonner and myself, and I ended up with 5 plays on that show. I actually like this card from a betting perspective, and just an update, too, because Scott just mentioned it, Chris Paul questionable. Chris Paul actually upgraded to probable tonight for the Houston Rockets.
You got to ask you. We'll get to a couple of those plays that you're plunking down your own money on in the UFC Fight Night Card 125 in Brazil. Before we get to the main event, before we get to your plays, I have to ask you about that one dog that I ask you about every week before I jump in, and we'll see if you agree with this one. Am I wise to believe that Desmond Green can pull off the small upset over Michael Prazeres? Green's all about sprawl and brawl. He's fast, nice counter striker. And the one thing about the Tractor, when I watch his fights, Matt, he's fun to watch, but I think he kind of loses his steam a little bit as he gets deeper into fights.
Yeah, you know what? I went through this fight a lot, and and one of the things I always do every week, and this one, rarely do I bet fights just based on numbers, but I made this fight minus 180 on Prazeres. So when it opened around 55, I was like, this is a pass for me. But as this fight got lower and lower, now down to minus 140, I went ahead and made a play on the favorite here. And the one thing you have to like about Michael Prazeres in this fight is, look, this guy's 23-2 and on a 5-fight win streak in the UFC, and he's 7-1 in his last UFC fights, with the only loss to Kevin Lee, who just fought for the interim lightweight title. This guy beats good guys. Beat Gilbert Burns, beat Josh Berkman, beat Mads Burnell, finished his last 2 opponents, has gone the distance plenty of times in the UFC. And the problem I have with Desmond Green is the guy has 20 wins, 14 by decision, and he's only 1-1 in the UFC. So out of 26 fights, 24 of them took place in much more regional organizations, and he was only able to finish. I mean, he has 14 of his 20 wins by decision. This is a guy who doesn't finish. MMA, that might work in boxing, but in the MMA world, these guys usually come in off the regional scene with 80, 90, 100% finish rates. Mm-hmm. Coming in with a finish rate in the 25% range is absolutely terrible. And it limits the ways you can win the fight. When your only chance to win the fight is by decision, oh, man, you're going to go fight a Brazilian in Brazil and hope to win on the scorecards? I went ahead and laid the 140 with Michael Prezeri.
Well, we've agreed on my underdog the last 2 weeks, and I've bet those two underdogs, and we've won. And this is why I asked Matthew Holt, king of the Octagon, because I will be staying off this underdog, Desmond Green, in this particular fight after that excellent analysis. So that's one of your 5 fights. What else you got for us?
And one of the things to consider, and I always tell people this, if the card is in Australia or Brazil, you better take hometown judging into effect.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, let's start right with the co-main event. Pedro Munhoz, John Dodson. At Stephan Bonner and I completely disagreed on this fight. I took the underdog here, Pedro Munhoz. I love the young up-and-comer coming off a big win and a one-handed guillotine choke over Rob Font, who's ranked in the UFC. The problem with John Dodson, he's the name here. He's the guy everybody knows. He fought Demetrius Johnson for the flyweight title twice, lost both times. He's only 2-2 since moving back to 135 pounds, and the 2 wins were over Eddie Wineland and Manny Gamburian, who isn't even in the UFC anymore. John Dodson at 33 years old, his prime may have passed him by. You know, he's certainly nowhere near the title picture at 135. He lost all his title shots at 125. Maybe he's just on the downslide of the mountain. On the other side, we have a guy, Pedro Munhoz, on a big win streak, who seems to be getting better and better with every fight. So I went ahead and took the plus 140 here with Pedro Munhoz.
What you got in the main event for us? I've been thinking that I wanted, well, it's just such a big price. What is it, 270, 280 at CG right now as far as Anders is concerned?
Yeah, I didn't know what to play on this card. Look, I mean, Eric Anders is so raw still, the former Alabama linebacker. He has unbelievable cardio. He's in amazing shape. He's an amazing athlete. His technical skills in the UFC are still a little bit raw, but Lyoto Machida has been finished in 3 straight fights. The under in this fight is 2.5 rounds, under 225. I thought about maybe making a play on the over, only because Lyoto Machida, when he was really at his best, was a guy who moved on his feet, and a lot of his fights did go to decision. I thought maybe he could make it halfway through this fight at a big price, but that's one I'm leaving alone. I looked further down the card for some bigger dogs and some more interesting fights, and I'll tell you, I found one. The first fight on the main card with Anthony Lionheart-Smith at plus 240 right now, facing Thiago Santos. These are 2 guys who can really bang. Anthony Lionheart-Smith, people don't realize because his record's so bad. He has 12 losses. He's 28-12, but most of those losses came really early in his career. In fact, he's 11-1 in his last 12 fights. 3-fight winning streak in the UFC, and this guy is a finishing machine. 14 knockouts, 11 submissions, and 28 wins. I went ahead and made a play on Anthony Smith at plus 240, hoping that one gets home. And the biggest play I made on the card, Marlon Vera, minus 130. I laid the 130 with Marlon Vera over Douglas Silva de Andrade. I watched Silva de Andrade's last fight against Rob Font, and he had a lot of trouble with a taller guy who could strike and move. De Andrade is only 5'6". He's short for the division. He's a power puncher who has a lot of problems with taller guys. Marlon Vera on a 4-fight win streak now, never been stopped in the UFC. He has 4 losses, never been stopped. Actually, on a 3-fight win streak, just lost a decision to the number 5 ranked fighter in the world, John Lineker, in a fight he was really competitive in. I think the 25-year-old Vera is really starting to put the pieces together, has improved quite a bit, and I think minus 130 is a bargain price.
It is a great betting weekend. The UFC, lots of college and pro basketball, the NHL, and, of course, the big game on Sunday. The last thing you want to do is waste time standing in line wherever you're at.
Oh, man, what a weekend this is going to be. I mean, and everything connects to itself. You know, we have props, total rounds completed in the UFC compared to Tom Brady touchdown passes. So everything touches the big game somehow. Crowds are going to be electric. Sports books are going to be full of people and energy. Take the 5 minutes, download the app, sign up for an account, whether you're at a Super Bowl party, your friend's house, the pub, the pool, the bar or the sports book itself, because you don't want to wait in those crazy lines that are wrapping around the entire casino. Bet the games where you watch the games from the convenience of your mobile phone. That's how people bet in 2018.
Great stuff as always, Matthew. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Dave. Best of luck this weekend. Take care.
And, of course, you can follow Matt Holt at Matthew Holt VP. And when we come back, we're going to look at a couple of props for Sunday's game. Stick around for that and more.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to Wager Talk Super Bowl weekend, and we're going to talk some props right now. A little bit later in the show, we're going to give some predictions on the Super Bowl itself, also some college basketball talk. But, guys, let's kick it off with some of the props. And I'll start it off. I'll throw one out there. We know that he's going to play. We figured he was going to play long before it was announced that he was going to play, talking about Rob Gronkowski. And one of the first plays that I made, assuming that he was going to go, was over 25 yards for Gronk's longest reception. And we saw in big games against Pittsburgh late in the season when they were fighting for home field advantage against Tennessee in the first playoff game, we saw them testing deeper waters with Gronk, and I think he had a 31-yarder against Tennessee and a 27-yarder against the Steelers or vice versa. I think it's the same thing here. I think they're going to test the deep waters with Gronkowski against Philly in this one.
Makes sense. And they've got a guy that I think they're going to want to exploit on the Philadelphia defense. Mm-hmm. Is it Mills?
Yes.
Number 31.
Okay, he's my opinion, of the 11 guys that are most regularly on the field for Philadelphia defensively, he's the weak link.
Right.
And if Bill Belichick knows there's a weak link out there, that staff will put together a game plan to try and exploit it. Well, Gronkowski would be the guy to exploit it with.
Would you guys say, like right now, I've seen anywhere from 8-1 to 15-1 for MVP, Gronk. So I haven't done that. I haven't pulled the trigger, but I've thought about it if I can find 15. I don't want 8.
My feelings are that if the Patriots win the Super Bowl,
Brady,
it's going to be Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get paid anything for it, but it's Brady. He's the best quarterback of all time, and because of that, there's a built-in positive bias for him.
Sure.
So that if it's a 10-7 game, obviously then he wouldn't win the MVP. But if this is the type of game that most people envision, where it's either in the 40s or the 50s, somewhere in there, and the Patriots win, unless somebody does something really dramatic, Brady's probably the favorite.
Yeah. And to go more to that, Dave, last year was the perfect example. If there's anybody that deserved to be the MVP, was White.
Right.
He played out of his mind in that game. Key to them coming back, and yet, we know Brady made the plays, the throws, but it's going to go to the quarterback, and yes, Tom Brady. It's kind of hard to bet against Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's why I like over 25 on Gronk, but not so sure about the MVP.
I want to just mention the MVP thing for a moment, because Blunt has been getting a lot of play for MVP. And
too much.
I got to tell you, I think that's a dumb bet.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he's going to get a whole – he's not going to run for 140 yards.
What's he going to run, 8 times, 10 times tops?
If he gets 2 short touchdowns, they're not giving him the MVP for that. Okay? I think if you're looking for props on LeGarrette Blount, stick to the deals where, for touchdowns or whatever, something like that. But MVP, I would think he's an extremely unlikely candidate.
When the props first came out, and Matt Holt was talking about this just in the last few days. I think it was on the videos with us at WagerTalk.com, where he was talking about, at one time he saw 60 or 70-1. And I remember mentioning it then, thinking, boy, if this guy gets 3 touchdowns, gets the ball inside the 5-yard line, scores 3 touchdowns, 60-1, 70-1.
Okay.
It's as low as 8-1 in some shops,
crazy.
Which is ridiculous because Ajayi is going to get the carries, the majority of the carries, and then they'll give it to Blunt inside the 5-yard line. So I agree with you. That's a ridiculous amount of bets that have been made on Blunt for MVP.
Which a lot of the wise guys around town are playing all of the props under on LeGarrette Blount.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't correlate.
Yeah. Any props that jumped off the page at you, Marco?
Yeah, I'm looking at Dion Lewis over 29.5 receiving yards. Saw this at Westgate at -110. We know that defensively the Eagles' strength comes from their speed rush, especially from the outside with Chris Long. the best way to slow down a pass rush like that is to hit them with screen passes.
Sure.
And we know nobody utilizes the backs as good as Brady does. It's like an extended running game. So I think he's going to get his screen passes. And if you look at the last few games, he's had his catches. This is one where at 29.5, he gets me 4 or 5 catches, which the receptions are at over 4.5 receptions.
Mm-hmm.
I think we go over 29.5 easily. And because they come with that speed rush, he misses. First guy misses one tackle, you're going to get that big chunk of yardage in one of the receptions. I like over 29.5.
Beyond that, even if he doesn't break a big one, I think there's a decent chance of winning something like that, because my opinion is that and again, look, I don't have any particular inside information on this. It's just kind of knowing Belichick and what his tendencies are. I think their running game is going to be a short passing game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I think you're going to. I think he's throwing 50 times in this game,
Sure.
And I think the running backs could all go over on their props.
Well, speaking of going to throw the ball 50 times, isn't that a prop that you like quite a bit?
That's actually my favorite prop. So, you don't have to buy,
and what is it again? 39.5, correct?
I think it's 39.5 right now, and I would be really surprised if he doesn't throw 45 times in the game. The one thing that could defeat that, if the Patriots happen to jump out to a big lead.
Sure.
But I don't think that's a likelihood in this football game. I think it's a really competitive matchup. So, to me, both teams are going to try and utilize their strengths. And the Patriots, the strength of their offense is Brady managing that short passing game and occasionally breaking a big one with Gronkowski.
I'll tell you what, if it's, let's say, for instance, it's, and I'm not saying it's going to be this way, but just to kind of follow up on a point you made about maybe they won't throw the ball a lot if they get up. I don't care if it's 35-14 in the fourth, going into the fourth, Patriots are up. I think they're still going to throw the football. I really do. They won't stop. Remember, they saw what Atlanta did last year. They happened to be there. So
yeah, and look what they did the first game against Tennessee.
Right.
They were blowing Tennessee out, and you think they would start running the football, but they kept passing the football, which was the weak link of the Tennessee team. So why not continue to attack the weak link? And the way they do their short passing game and stuff, like you said, it is an extension of the run, so it still moves the clock.
Anything else you were looking at, Marco?
Yeah, I like one here. And this one you can get at plus money. And anytime I've got a prop that I feel I got a better than 50% chance of cashing, and I'm getting plus on it, I'm going to do that all day long. Sure. And will the Pats convert a fourth down attempt in this game? And I'm going to go yes for plus 115. And with this one, I feel I've got 2 opportunities to cash on this one. One, we know that Belichick is a numbers guy. He does things with where the positive EV is. Like a sabermetrics guy in baseball tells you, don't bunt. It's better to hit away. He knows that if it's 4th and short and he's at any place reasonable on the field, he's going to go for it rather than kicking it away more often than not. So I think I can get a cash that way. And, of course, if the Patriots find themselves behind, this is a team that we know who do you want better with the ball, having to move down the field and having to convert a 4th down, but Tom Brady. So I like that one to cash at plus money.
There should be a plus money prop out there, and of course it would have to be a higher prop because you've got several guys who can touch the football. But will Tom Brady run the football on a 4th down play in the Super Bowl? Because, it's funny. I'm trying to think which team was it that we saw. Was it Pittsburgh that had a 4th down and short play?
Yeah, against Jacksonville. Not once, but twice.
Snake your big quarterback.
I don't know if he will here, and that's where I think.
I think on 4th and short he will. He'll do what he got.
That's
got
where,
here.
To me, the hand injury might have an impact because. It's a
that hand injury that saw come into no play at all last week or 2 weeks ago.
But didn't he run one last week?
He did. He did actually run one. Yeah, he did.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he ran one last week.
I was just wondering.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
He might not take a snap right under center. Those might be the most difficult to handle.
No, it's a good point. I think if his hand isn't bothering him, if it's 90% healthy. And we saw him again a couple weeks ago. I think it's a situation where he just keeps it, but it's obviously not a prop, so my point is moot. But I tell you what, another one, guys, we talked about this on videos. And by the way, folks, you can watch Wager Talk's videos for the Super Bowl weekend. Marco, Gil Alexander, Matt Humans, Dave, myself, Matt Holt, the Greek. Who else do we have? Ralph Michaels. It was a great cast. I mentioned Gil. Yeah. One of the ones I brought up on our set was over 9.5 points in the first quarter. And so far, I think there's been 3,400 under bets on this prop and 2 over 9.5. And I think part of that goes into what Dave was saying earlier, and I agree with Dave's opinion, is that they're going to pass the football as much as possible, including running plays. They're going to be extended running plays through the passing game, Marco, and I happened to be on that one, over 9.5 points in the first quarter.
I happened to listen to a podcast today, in fact, because I contributed a 2-minute soundbite to it, and this is what they did on it. Joe Fortenbaugh interviewed a bunch of different people, and it was
he does a good job with that stuff.
And it was just pick a side for the game and your best prop. And he must have had 20 different people on there. And I can't tell you how many of them, and nobody knows what the other guy did because these are separate interviews. Everybody's talking about under that first quarter because Brady and Belichick don't score. You know,
and it has nothing to do with this game.
Yeah.
They might win their bet. I might lose my over 9.5, but it has nothing to do with this game because it's a different Patriot offense than what we've seen in previous Super Bowls.
It is, and you know what? We know the tendency of Belichick that when he wins the coin toss, he always defers.
Yep.
Okay. That's part of the reason why they don't score in the first quarter, too.
Right.
Because, one, the Super Bowls are played like a boxing match. When they come out that first round, you're jabbing and just filling the other team out. And usually the Patriots have been there all the time, okay? A lot of times you're playing a team that doesn't have as much experience in a Super Bowl. Last year, Atlanta. This year, you got Philadelphia. So they're not going to come out and be swinging and slinging right away. They don't want to make a mistake to fall behind early. So you get that first drive that's conservative. Then you get New England that doesn't, that defers the ball. So they don't have as much chance. If they use up 5-6 minutes of the quarter, and we know that there's always the prop out there about the first 6 minutes and 30 seconds, will there be a score in that? There's less chances to score, I believe, in that first quarter.
I think if Philly's smart, they come out passing. I got to tell you guys, I really believe that. I know New England's got a bad run defense yardage-wise. That's another thing to throw into that mix. You look at what New England's done defensively, everybody talks about, they haven't given up any points. Least amount of points in the NFL the last 10 weeks or whatever it is. Have you seen the schedule? Buffalo twice, the Jets twice. Yeah. They played a bunch of nobodies offensively for most of the last 10 or 12 weeks. So, Marco, but if I'm Philly, there's one team that's beaten New England, during this Brady Belichick era, and they did it a couple of times, and that was a team coached by Tom Coughlin. And he did things a little, even though they were low scoring, like the low scoring game or whatever, he did things kind of outside the box. And he didn't try to out fancy or whatever you want to call it or out trick Bill Belichick. There was no, he didn't have to inflate his ego by looking like he was a little bit smarter than Bill on the other sideline. I would love to see Doug Peterson come out knowing that Ajayi is a running back, knowing that they can bring in LeGarrette Blount for short field situations or short down situations, play action right out of the blocks. Just play action.
Why not? Look, Jacksonville was aggressive early and paid off for them.
Yep.
In fact, had they stayed aggressive, it might be them playing this weekend in Minnesota. But,
get aggressive early, man, against this team.
The only other thing I'll say on that trend, and really this doesn't have any particular meaning as far as one bet goes, but the old thing in our business about when a trend becomes public.
Yeah.
When everybody finds out about a trend, that's the time that it's going to start going the other way. It's a good example of it coming out of the NHL All-Star break earlier this week.
Ooh.
Oh, boy.
Big time.
The trend was, the overs are money in the bank coming out of the All-Star break, and, of course, they go 9 unders and 3 overs.
Here's what I got is I had repeated that and sent it out to a group of people, and I said, just in case you're looking to bet totals, I go, be careful of just jumping in a bunch of unders. You never know. I go, here's the last 2 years, 20 overs, 4 unders, and 2 pushes the last 2 years, first day back out of the All-Star break. I go, that doesn't mean to play them all. No. And in fact, I played one. I played one over, which was the Winnipeg game, and it was a 3-1 final. It lost, so we went 0-1. But if you were one of those guys, and I know a few of them, and I got their emails,
so
and I played 6, 7, 5 totals based on that, you basically lost a whole lot of bankroll in one afternoon.
There's some hockey guys that I follow on Twitter. They're solid guys, but they just got caught up in this and decided, I'm going to just play every game over.
Right.
Yeah, I hate playing anything blindly for an entire
That's got to match. That's why I only played one. Out of all those games, Marco, you're absolutely right. That's why I only played one game, because that was the only game that fit what I really thought was a good over, no matter what day of the week it was.
Because the bookmakers know that trend too, and that they had to adjust some of the totals a little.
Not only that, but look, the coaches know it, and I'm sure a lot of these coaches looked at what happened the last couple of years coming out of the All-Star break and go, well, we got to fix that, and they did.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. We talked about Belichick always, defers to the second half. Do you think he would ever you win the coin toss and actually take the ball and change everybody up?
That I don't think. I think he likes the idea of deferring and having his defense on the field first. And
It's interesting.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But if it was ever going to do it, it might be this season, Marco.
I mean, he's heard about it. All the reporters ask, the same question. You haven't scored a touchdown in 7, 7
and
games.
Not only that, it's also because his defense gives up so much on and maybe not points wise, but yardage wise, they're not good against the run, and they're a great bend don't break defense. And, it's a good point, something I never thought about. Any other props that you guys want to throw out there before we take a break?
This one's kind of correlated to what we've been talking about with the scoring, but not because the Patriots don't score in the first quarter, but pick which half is going to have more points scored. And I always like in the Super Bowl, this is one where unless you got two really bad defenses, which if they're in the Super Bowl, you probably don't have that situation, I like to take the second half over as opposed to the first half. Higher scoring, I should say, second half over the first half. And again, it goes back to that beginning of the game where you have neither team wanting to try to make a mistake early on. The butterflies for whatever for the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter how many Super Bowls you've been there. This is the biggest game you played all year. And I go again to Belichick. There's not anybody better at adjustments. He comes out, sees what they throw at him in that first half, and that's one of the reasons why I believe he always wants the ball in the second half, because he wants to have that extra possession in the second half when he's made the adjustments to what they're throwing at him. I'm betting over the second half is a higher scoring than the first half, and I'm seeing that around town at -125.
I like it because even though the first quarter total this year is 9.5, it's going to be shorter than any other quarter anyway. It was just to maybe adjusted a little bit more because everybody was going to come in and play the under in the first quarter. But that's something that I like also is your play there on the over. I mean, more points being scored in the second half over the first half. Final one that I'm going to throw at you guys, longest touchdown, over 44.5 yards. I've seen as high as over 45.5 yards, so you got to kind of shop around a little bit. And that means you're going to get defense, special teams, offense, what have you. And I'm not sure if we mentioned it on this podcast, Dave, or if you said it before we started it, but you've got number 31 on the defensive side for the Philadelphia Eagles, which is, of course, Mills. And, boy, you just wonder, they're going to go after him. You don't wonder about that. They will go after him. You wonder if he's going to have enough help to be able to deny that. But, again, you also get, let's say Nick Foles is a little shaken, a little nervy in that first or second quarter, and maybe they're behind in the third and they're throwing the ball a lot. Always got that shot at a pick six, and we've seen Tom Brady struggle a little bit at times in Super Bowls throwing to the wrong colored jerseys. So over 44.5 was the final prop that I wanted to bring up for me.
I don't have any involvement in that one, but you make a good case.
I was having dinner, I won't say which casino, but I was having dinner about 2 weeks ago with Joe Fahmy, who's a big stock market guru from New York, and he's always on with Neil Cavuto, the Fox Business Channel and all that. We had a sports book guy who was with us one night. Unfortunately, Marco, you were at the Cosmopolitan with Kelly in Vegas and Johnny and all those guys, and I couldn't make that first night down there. I was hanging out with these guys, and this particular sportsbook guy said it was his favorite prop. He goes, I don't know what it's going to come out. I think it was before the conference championships were played? Yeah. And he goes, it's probably going to be about 43.5, 44.5 when we said it. And he said, boy, he goes, I play that over every year. And, I didn't go back to look to see how many times it cashes. I just happen to like the matchup in this particular game. Anything else, Marco?
Those are it for me for the ones I like the best for Sunday.
Good stuff, guys. Let's take a quick timeout. More Super Bowl talk in the Best Bets segment at the end of the show. When we come back, though, we're going to hit the college hardwood for a few Saturday big game matchups. Stick around.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to Wager Talk Super Bowl Weekend Podcast. And I wanted to mention before we jump into college basketball, Marco was talking in the break a little bit. One of the best pieces of advice that I can come up with when it comes to betting Super Bowl props is to not really make it too much of your handicap. So whether you like New England or Philadelphia, you want your props to have a chance to come in, whether those teams are losing big, losing close, or winning big or winning close. They've got to be separated to a certain extent to where, for instance, like Dave's favorite prop, which is over 39.5 passes from Tom Brady, has a great shot of happening whether they are ahead in the second half or fighting from behind in the second half. I just think it's a great piece of advice for betting props. College basketball preview for Saturday. Not a lot of sexy college basketball matchups this weekend, guys, but there are a few top 25 clashes, and let's start in the Big 12. Texas Tech at Texas Christian. I've got TCU power rated at -1 in this game in Fort Worth, and Dave, TCU whipped West Virginia and Kansas State at home and are 5 points away from a 13-0 home mark. They lost by 4 to Kansas. They lost by 1 to Oklahoma, those 2 games at home. They can struggle on the defensive end. That's one thing about TCU, while Tech is solid at both ends of the floor.
Something's wrong with Tech right now, though. I mean, they're just not playing good basketball.
Mid-season lull, maybe? I haven't heard anything coming out of there, out of Lubbock.
If it's not for Evans last night, I mean, he was just amazing against Texas. But this is a game where Texas Tech they look like they're in command. They've got a 12 or 13-point lead. Mm-hmm. And the next thing you see, they're down by 4 or 5 points. They were lucky to get the game to overtime and then hit a buzzer beater in the overtime to get the win. I don't know. They're just in a little bit of a lull right now. And last night, boy, that was a game where they were a one-man team and nobody else was contributing. So, you're not going to win many games in the Big 12 with just one guy. And while TCU's got some defensive issues, and Evans is probably going to have a good game against them, I'm a little reluctant to back Texas Tech at this point. But the flip side of it is, and this is why you don't want to read too much into one game, even though they've been struggling, they didn't struggle in the second half in that South Carolina game last week. They were tremendous. Now, you can make a case that South Carolina's kind of a middle-of-the-road team this year, and you're probably right on that, but it's still a tough atmosphere to go in and get an impressive comeback win in the second half. So I really don't know what to make of them right now. Based on current form, I don't think I want to back Texas Tech. But, you just know this team with their talent is going to start turning it around at some point. So call it a guess on my part, but I think I lean to the Red Raiders here. Just not with enough conviction to go out and actually bet the game.
I don't like going against TCU at home is one of the things, but I get it if you like Tech here. The one thing that worries me, though, about backing Tech on the road, they've got, you look up and down that roster, Marco, there are several players on that roster for Tech whose the gap between their assists to turnovers is very small. 35 assists on the season, 28 turnovers, 42 assists, 31 turnovers. It's really a small gap on their assist to turnover ratio.
Well, that should be a little bit better facing TCU.
True.
Because this is like, Jamie Dixon's been totally reversed as a coach.
It's weird.
He has been a defensive coach his entire career. He coached the Pitt Panthers for all those years after Ben Holland left. And, he was an assistant for Holland, for those years in Pitt. And we know that, Holland was a big defensive coach as well. And now all of a sudden he's got an offensive juggernaut, but they don't play any defense. As far as Texas Tech not playing well, they're not playing well at the windows. They're not catching. Right. They have won their last 3 games in a row, and 2 of them been on the road. So I don't feel as bad about Texas Tech. But in this spot, they're going to be getting points on the road. Right. I don't have to worry about laying points and not covering. I think that they're going to have success against this TCU defense. And TCU, give them credit. I was on them earlier in the week. They got a big win on the road for me at Oklahoma State. And that was a situation where I was going more against Oklahoma State than I was taking TCU. Sure. I thought it was a horrible scheduling spot for Oklahoma State. But this TCU team, I just can't lay points with a team that doesn't play defense the way they do. And they did have that big win at home against West Virginia. TCU did.
I wonder how much that's starting to mean at this point. West Virginia's got some issues.
They can't shoot.
Okay. They have their half-court offense is atrocious. Uh-huh. The other thing on TCU I wanted to mention, look, at some point they're going to start missing the guard. The kid who got hurt. And again, I'm sorry about the names. I'm awful with names, but you know what I'm talking about. The kid's a good player. He's not. I don't think he's an NBA guard, but he's a good college guard, and they're gonna miss him.
Guys, I don't know what you make the line. I only power rated TCU 1 point better on their home floor in this game, so I'm hoping that it comes out 3 or something like that. Because if it's a couple of points a basket or so off my power rating, that I might have to jump in on Texas Tech. It would probably be a very small play if I did. Not sure I'm going to jump in on it anyway, but I only power rated TCU -1. I don't have to balance any betting at my home. Any of the windows, no matter what window you're at the house.
That's right. There you go.
All right, to the SEC, guys. Kentucky's at Mizzou, and Marco, Missouri just snapped a 3-game losing streak that caught Alabama at the right time. Bama off the big win over OU. Missouri's a little inconsistent on the offensive end for me. I think if Kentucky's young players can keep from looking ahead to a revenge spot against Tennessee, they escape Columbia with probably about a 6 to 8 point win.
Yeah, I like Kentucky here, and this is a spot. We see it all the time with these Kentucky teams. They start the season with new players because this is a factory, one and done, in and out. That's been the case forever. But as the season progresses, they start to get better and better, and they get ready for tournament time. What I like is this team is playing some good defense right now. You look at the last 5 games, nobody shot over 40% against them. The last game, they had a major scare, and it was to be expected. They came off that big game Saturday at West Virginia, and they were getting blown out at halftime. Dave, you and I talked about this on the Friday radio show. We went with West Virginia for the first half because, as I said, this young team, I thought Kentucky would have trouble against that press at the beginning of the game. But they made the adjustments. Once they learned how to crack the press, it was Katie bar the door for Kentucky because they got too many offensive weapons to West Virginia, and they turned what was a first half route to a total route the other way coming back. So after that big comeback, the letdown there at home against Vanderbilt was to be expected.
And they steal the win anyway.
They steal the win anyways. And that, to me, eliminates that look ahead to Tennessee. If they would have blown Vanderbilt out after the West Virginia game, then I would say, this is a dangerous spot going on the road because, playing, a weekend game at home when you got Kentucky coming into your building, that place is going to be nuts. But the fact that they had the scare gives me total focus for Kentucky, and if they come in focused, they are the better team. They'll get the job done. This might be one where Missouri gets out to maybe a good start because of the crowd at the beginning, but I just don't think they have the firepower to stay with Kentucky, and they don't have the defensive pressure that a West Virginia had.
The guy, this is a perfect situation for Calipari because he can get in there and say, guys, if a guy who's a good foul shooter doesn't go up there and brick those free throws, we lose.
Yep.
Okay, we got lucky in that game. We got to go out and show intensity in every game. And they're playing a Missouri team that I think will have their attention here. Missouri's pretty good. Just imagine how good Missouri would have been if Porter didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Oof. This is a team that could have been in the mix to go a long way in the NCAA tournament. They're having a fine year anyway, and this looks to me to be one of those games where if you like Missouri, bet them in the first half. If you like Kentucky, bet the full game. If you like Missouri, bet the first half because Missouri's going to come out flying in this basketball game. They're off a confidence-building win, and they're going to, this is definitely a game that they've undoubtedly got circled as one of their biggest games of the season. So I would expect, one of those, the crowd's going to be nuts. There's going to be lots of excitement, and the team's going to be fired up. In the first 10 minutes of the game, I wouldn't be surprised if they're ahead. After that, I think Kentucky's just overall athleticism and size probably starts to take over the game. I don't think I want Kentucky full game because I like this Missouri team. And I'm probably not going to bet Missouri first half because I think Calipari is able to get his team well prepared for this game off the scare at Vanderbilt where they got lucky. Tough game for me. Actually, one of the games I really want to watch, but not one of the games I really want to bet.
I think I might be on Kentucky. If I get the line I want, I really do. I think it'll be a full game play on Kentucky for me. Won't be the biggest game on the card, but I'll tell you what, you talked about playing in Columbia. I think it was called Ahern Arena, Ahern Center, whatever, back in the day. There were 2 places that we traveled to a couple of times back when I was growing up in Big 8 country and Missouri Valley country, which we went to see Nebraska at Missouri basketball. Steve Stepanovich, John Sunvold. I don't know if you remember those guys, Storm and Norman Stewart, on the coach. That place, Ahern Arena, whatever it was called back then, the old place was, I never seen a place rock like that except for Cook Arena, Wichita State, when we saw them when Creighton would play on the road at Wichita. 2 of the craziest joints I like the new arena for Mizzou, and it's relatively new. It's not brand new, but I like the new arena for Mizzou, but it's not quite the same as it was back in the day. I mean, that place creaked, and you thought the walls were going to fall down in that old place.
I mean, because money is everything. We keep getting bigger arenas,
Sure.
on the college level. Remember the old days, like when you would play Temple with the Palestra or stuff like that. When you played in those cracker box gyms, it was such a big home court advantage because the crowd was right there on the floor, right? And you don't have that
That's why, my favorite arena right now in college basketball, one of my top 5 at least, probably top 3, is the Barn, Williams Arena in Minnesota. I love that the way the upper deck hangs over the court. If they didn't have so many problems going on off the court, that team had a chance to get somewhere this year. But I love that arena, that old arena.
A small, obviously, the most intimidating home court I've ever seen was the Thomas and Mack in the heyday.
Oh, yeah.
Because now you get 18,000 people screaming and going absolutely crazy. But by and large, I think the toughest home courts, and there are exceptions. I mean, Wichita State, they hold a lot of people, and that place is insane. But these little bandboxes, when they're packed to capacity, they can be very intimidating. I always thought the St. John's was better in their campus gym, which, I don't know, what did they sit, maybe a couple of thousand?
Yeah, maybe that.
And Madison Square Garden, it wasn't the same home court advantage for them. They didn't even have the whole crowd.
Look at Seton Hall when they'd play in the gym rather than the arena. They always had a better advantage. And San Jose State this year, got about 150 people at about a 4,000-seat gym.
Yeah, and they're not very noisy either.
Well, when 100 of those 150 are the opposing team's fans.
Well, the echo's deafening.
It's deafening. There you go.
The thing is, that can sometimes be a home court advantage, too. Because the other team doesn't have there's an excitement factor about going into a building where it's like the crowd's really going to be pumped up.
Sure, you're pumped up yourself.
And you get a chance to really quiet that crowd. How can you quiet a crowd that's not a crowd?
I just want one opposing player to go in, make a dunk or something like that, and then turn to the crowd as he's running down to play defense, put the finger up to the mouth and make the shh signal. There ain't nobody there anyway.
Call him a technical.
Probably. Anyway, guys, final game to talk about in college basketball for Saturday before we get to best bets is national title contending Virginia venturing out on the road to the Carrier Dome, taking on a capable Syracuse team, guys, in this one. And boy, I tell you, the Cavs have been playing A+ basketball for a while now. They had Duke, they had Louisville, they've got this game, then they've got at Florida State, followed by in-state rival Virginia Tech, and it's tough to keep that eagle eye focus night in, night out. This is a scary spot that they got to be careful of going into the Carrier Dome against Syracuse, guys.
It's one of those watch-out games because Syracuse is going to be ready for this game. That place is going to be nuts. Carrier Dome can be intimidating, and the scheduling dynamics are not favorable for Virginia here. And look, they weren't exactly razor sharp the other night. We're down a guy in the game, and it wasn't their best performance. And it's not the worst thing in the world if Tony Bennett's team. And I know this sounds weird when you say it. It's not the worst thing in the world that they drop a game. Because right now, the hype machine is really in high gear for Virginia, and it's a little early for that. And if I'm the coach, I'm obviously not going to intentionally try and lose the game. But it's not going to drive me absolutely nuts if my team throws in a clunker, because that does two things. One, it quiets the hype machine. And two, it gives you a chance to go into practice and yell and scream.
Exactly.
And I think Syracuse might get an upset here.
This is definitely a spot where you want to think about grabbing the home dog. The problem that concerns me is how in the hell is Syracuse going to score any points in this game? This is the best defense in the country. And
no doubt.
Syracuse doesn't score points. I mean, what are they going to put the over-under?
Let me throw this in there before you continue. Remember that first game this year at Virginia, 68-61 final, and Virginia had a plus 10 margin on the free throw line. If they don't get that, they might not win that game. But I understand what you're saying, but I wanted to throw that out there.
What do they put the over-under on this game? Because it's going to be Syracuse is going to slow it down even more at home.
I don't remember what it was for the last meeting, but I'm going to say $1.17, something like that, as far as the total, $1.20 in that neighborhood. It was 68-61 was the final.
It was 114.
Okay, I was going to say 117, 118 then, yeah.
This is one where, you make the joke of race to 60. 60 is going to win this game for sure. Okay? I just don't see it. My problem, with Syracuse is they have won 3 of their last 4 games, guys. Prior to that, they lost 4 in a row. But the 3 wins We're against Pitt twice, which we've talked about numerous times about my Pitt Panthers.
Yeah.
They are god-awful this year. And Boston College is not a lot better. So I'm not impressed with what Syracuse has done. Here's where it gets, if they can get out to that lead early, that the crowd is in it and they can continue to play, the half court, play defense, play slow, shorten this game, they have a chance. But what happens if you fall behind that, 8 to 10 points at any part of this game where you got to be making the buckets? I just don't know that they got enough offense to do it. And that scares me. I might look at the total because based on the first game getting to where it got with the 68-61, maybe we get a decent over-under here. I lean under in this one. If I can get like 117, 118 that you were talking, I think I look at the under in this one.
Plus you get, remember that last game, it was 129 points, but as I mentioned, Virginia got a lot of free throws in the second half of that basketball game to get it up to 129. So, excuse me, I think I like your total thoughts there. I like all your thoughts on the game. I just think it's a situational spot here.
There's nobody more situational than me, and it definitely is. But boy, I've watched Virginia.
Doesn't mean you run out and bet Syracuse.
Yeah, there's sometimes that you still the situation's there, but boy, you got to look at the eye test. And
what I like about this Virginia team, and on the radio show on the Las Vegas Sports Line, I used them against Clemson 10 days ago, whatever it was. And I had mentioned to Dave on the show, we're doing the show, and I said, there's a good chance Virginia scores 60 points in this one, and that's it. And those kind of teams that play a more deliberate pace, first team to 60 mentality, I never want to lay a lot of points at them. However, they might score 60, and Clemson might have a hard time reaching 40. The final was 61-36, so you never know. And they shoot well, by the way. It's not that they can't shoot the ball. They're better
this year.
Yeah.
Last year's team, they were more offensively challenged, but better defense. Yep. This year, they got some offensive balance. The one other thing that I will say that is a benefit to Syracuse, because of the style that they play, is better suited not to be against Virginia, because they're used to a defense, slower game, where a lot of the other teams in the ACC like to go up and down the floor and don't play defense, and it frustrates them more, this Virginia defense.
Good stuff, guys. Let's take our last time out. When we come back, best bets, could be some Super Bowl predictions. Stick around. Welcome back to Wager Talk Super Bowl 52 this weekend. Best bet segment. We're going to give our Super Bowl final score predictions. Let's go to the man under the hat. You can follow him on Twitter at Dave Cokin. And it's not just one of those things where you get a tweet every 3 days. I think the guy tweets out more in one night than I do in a month. Dave, what's your Super Bowl prediction and what's going on this weekend with Dave Cokin Sports?
Well, it remains to be seen what happens this weekend, because I don't know what the basketball schedule will look like, and we'll dissect all the games and try and come up with the best ones. Doing really well with the
Any special packages is what I was talking about this week. Not what games are you on?
Not yet. It depends on how many games I've got and what shows up. So hopefully I'm going to find a 5% play someplace along the line. But I can't guarantee that. But as far as the best bet goes, we'll talk about the Super Bowl. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think that you're going to see both teams throwing the football. Probably the Patriots more than the Eagles. I mentioned earlier about the Patriots, the prop on Brady to go over on pass attempts and probably on pass completions as well. I think this is going to be an extremely competitive game, like so many have been in recent years. When push comes to shove at the end of the game, I want Belichick and Brady. High-scoring game, 30-27, Patriots.
That
would be perfect for me, because I've got the Patriots at money line, at even money, and I've got the Eagles +6.
Very nice.
I'm hoping for a Patriots win by a few points and cash 2 tickets.
Very nice. At Marco in Vegas is where you can find Marco. He is one of the co-founders of WagerTalk.com. Any special bonuses going on this weekend or discounts at all for not just you, but for the entire website this weekend?
Well, we have the coupon code. If you watch the videos this week, Super10, they can get $10 off any package this weekend. And knock on wood, we're running really hot right now with the basketball, 9-2 since last Friday. I'm not a high-volume guy, so 9-2. I'll take that, and we're rolling into the weekend. Super Bowl, guys, I look at it this way, and we talked about this at length in the videos that we did this week, but let's go back to Conference Championship Week. and all of the books had all of the potential matchups out. And prior to the championship games being played, the New England Patriots were a 7-point favorite if they matched up against Philadelphia. We know that there's always going to be some kind of adjustment after the games are played. But we're sitting now, that game went from 7 before it was played to an opener of 6 to immediately bet to 5.5, 5, 4.5, and then we've talked about all the money that's come in on the Philadelphia Eagles, these $1 million bets here in Vegas, and we've seen some casinos down to 4. Most of them are back to 4.5 again. I just think it's too much of an adjustment. I realize Philadelphia looked fantastic last week against Minnesota, but let's not overlook a couple facts. They played both games at home. They played both games at home against dome teams outside. That's something that I chose to overlook that stat going into the Philadelphia-Minnesota game. I went with Minnesota, full disclosure, but they did not play well. They got the first touchdown. Case Keenum threw the interception for the pick 6 to tie the game, and Philadelphia never looked back. I think New England's experience in this game is too much. Nick Foles, we went from a month ago to the Eagles were dead to everybody's betting now millions of dollars on the Eagles. You want to talk about crossing the fence and jumping from one bandwagon to the other?
People would have thought you were absolutely foolish if you would have said that the majority of the money is going to be on Philadelphia in the Super Bowl against New England, and there's going to be 6 and 7 figures all up and down the strip on Philadelphia, even on the money line. If you would have said that when Carson Wentz got injured, you would have been laughed out of the room.
Yeah.
And what people forget is the series right whenever Carson Wentz got hurt, they had 3-game stretch where this vaunted Philadelphia defense gave up 24 to Seattle, gave up 35 to the Rams, and 29 to the Giants. They made Eli Manning look like, Super Bowl Hall of Famer Eli Manning for that game, and he had a ton of yards in the first half. The Giants should have put Philadelphia away in that game in the first half. A couple of mistakes kept Philadelphia around to salvage the win. But down the stretch of the season, they played Oakland, Dallas that was dead in the water. They played Atlanta, the outdoor team, in December, and then Minnesota. So, yes, they held Atlanta to 10 and Minnesota to 7, but Case Keenum was playing his biggest game of his career, the NFC Championship game. We talked about, the inexperience factor of the quarterbacks. They're not facing an inexperienced quarterback this week. And we talked about Mills. He is laid off. You talked about the over for the longest touchdown. The only way you don't get that is if Mills...
As if it goes under.
No, it's not. If Mills is beat like he's been beat the last month of the season, and he just grabs the guy and you get the pass interference. Yeah. That's the only way you don't cash that one, because I don't know why Minnesota quit going that direction. He was playing 5 yards off of the receiver.
Ridiculous.
Because he has been beaten deep so many times down the last month of the season that he's overcompensating, and if they still run by him, he's just grabbing them. So I like New England. The question is, do you want to lay the 4.5 or do you want the money line? The target number I'm looking for is 175. If we get 175, money line for sure. I might split my bet a little bit, but it's New England and money line.
It was around $1.80 or so, $1.85 on Thursday morning, and I think Matthew Holt might have told us in that opening segment that they were starting to get New England money line play, so it might inch its way back up a little bit, which is the smart play. If you're going to be on New England, the line should still be 40 cents higher.
Where it ends up.
I'm just saying where it is now, as far as if this was kickoff right now.
Right.
That's I think it's smart. But I have to say, though, that I still kind of like Philly, Marco, plus the points. I'm going to bump my total up a little bit because I did say on the videos 28-24 in favor of the Pats. I'm going to get closer to Cokin's score. I think it's going to be 31-27. I like about 50. Each team's going to kick one more field goal that I predicted the other day on the videos. I think there'll be about 58 points scored on this one. And you'll remember you mentioned, what the potential line was if these two teams were to match up against each other. The AFC versus NFC line for this game before the playoffs began, the total was around 51.
Yep.
Now, a lot of times they'll say, well, you got to, and you do, you have to pump up the total a little bit for the Super Bowl because the public wants to bet the over. And it was 40. I got 47.5. That's what I played it over at. Last I saw, it hadn't inched up as much as I thought it would, but it's still 48, 48.5.
You still got to jump in now if you're going to play the over.
And I think the number's still good to jump in now. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, so do I. But on Sunday, on Super Bowl Sunday, it's got to go up.
Yep, you would think so. So there you go. I mean, I'm going to say 31-27 New England. Dave says 30-27 New England. Marco,
28-20. I'm going to go right on the total.
Why can't you make it 30-20? Give me 30-12. I'll take 28-20 over 47.5, but 30-20 would at least give me, a safety of a cushion there. Can't you? Never mind. I don't like you anyway. Well, guys, best of luck this weekend in the Super Bowl, no matter what everybody does with their props, their sides, their totals. Everybody have fun, and don't bet over your head on a game like this. It's not one of the top 20 or top 40 spots over the 17 weeks of regular season and the 3 weeks of the playoffs, but it should be a fun game. I do like the total, like an average play. As far as the side's concerned, it's an opinion on steroids.
Just to back you up on that, that's something that people, we're not just saying that as a public service. Really, this is the game that has the tightest line. Everybody knows everything that there is to know about this game. To make it your biggest wager of the year is ridiculous. When you've had so many weeks and so many games.
17 weeks and all those games. And by the way, I do want to say this. I think I said average. I meant to say above average. I like the total as an above average play. Yeah. The side for me is, again, opinion on roids, as we'll say it. But anyway, everybody, whether you play the game or not, enjoy it. Be safe. And you know what to do, man. Put your weekend in the win column, and we will be right back here the Thursday night following the Super Bowl. We'll really start jumping into basketball. Guys, I was chatting with Aaron Brewski, our NBA guy, on Twitter the other night, and we'll get him to step in and do some NBA segments with us over the final couple of months of the regular season into the postseason. For Marco, for Dave, for Mark Seidel at the controls, I'm Scott. Have a great weekend.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.
I'll catch you on the flip side.